Hey guys, how's it going? So in this video, I just want to say, you don't own your children. It's true. You don't own your children. This was actually the topic of an argument on my Facebook just not long ago, about, I'd say a couple weeks ago or whatever. And I figured, well, maybe this would be a good topic or, a good subject to cover in a video on my YouTube channel. So lo and behold, here I am talking about it. So yeah, you don't own your children. Much in the way you don't own anybody. You're not owned and you own no one. Now, you own things like a car, a microwave, wicker furniture. You own those things because they are inanimate objects. The cell phone I'm using, the camera I'm using, I own this. But as far as another human being goes, I don't own another human being. Even if I had children of my own, which I don't, but let's say, for example, I did, I don't own them. See, there's a difference between ownership and stewardship. Now, if I had children, yes, I would be a progenitor of that child, but that doesn't mean that I am the owner or the proprietor of the child. I am a steward of the child's well-being and care. I know a lot of people think that they own their kids and that having children is a birthright. Having children is actually a privilege. It's not a birthright. It's a privilege, which is why those privileges can be taken away if the parent or the progenitor or the legal guardian, whoever's in charge, if they are found to be within violation of the child's care, whether it be physical, sexual abuse, starvation, any number of things that does not benefit the well-being and care of the child. The children can be removed from the home and out of the care of a foster parent or the biological parents or the grandparents, whoever has stewardship or custody over the child. Custody is not the same thing as ownership. You don't own the child, okay? The reason you don't own your children and the state doesn't own your children is because, unlike inanimate objects, human beings have rights. And if you understood history, even just the slighty little bit of it, slighty, I know it's not a word, but I'm using it in this video. If you understood just the slighty little bit of American history, you would know why we abolished and outlawed slavery. Because you don't own people. You don't. You don't own people's property. You don't own people, period. We have rights. We are not owned. A lot of people will have opinions about this. Well, the government owns us because we got to pay taxes on the property. Well, no, even still, the state, the government does not own you. If we pay taxes on the land owned by the government, we pay the taxes to inhabit the land. We pay to inhabit the land in which we live on. They don't own us. They own the land that we live on. We pay a tax, or we pay, we pay rent, which goes to the taxes on the property. We have to pay for the land that we inhabit. The state, city, township, whatever, county, whatever, they own the land in which we inhabit. They own the land. They don't own the people. The people have rights. The land is just the land. Another argument I had, it's kind of a subtopic of ownership, is the fact that most people think that the state, that they own prisoners, people who are in state penitentiary. And again, the state does not own them. Confinement is part of the punishment by the courts because the prisoner had violated a social contract which landed them in that situation. They are being punished by the state. They are a ward of the state. And while in confinement, as a ward of the state, they have an obligation to be stewards of the well-being and care of the inmate, humanely. The state doesn't own you. They've stripped your freedom of you because you violated a social contract, and your punishment is confinement. They don't own you. They're not forcing you against your will. They're not holding you for ransom. They're not holding you hostage. They are holding you in custody. Your punishment from the courts is confinement, stripping you of your freedom. Nobody owns you. Your parents don't own you. You don't own your children. And the weakest argument, the weakest comeback from that argument is, well, Jared, you don't have kids. I mean, it's the weakest point you could make. From now on, when I see this come up in a conversation or when someone says this to me, well, you don't have kids, that right there signals the end of the argument. They have forfeited the argument because there is no argument. It's just a conversation where they are factually incorrect. You don't have to have kids to have common sense about children. We have got to get rid of that line of thinking that in order to understand children, you have to have children. Well, you got to have common sense first. And most parents lack common sense. You don't own your kids. You don't own another human being, period, at all. You are the progenitors of that child, or you have legal custodialship, guardianship, whatever the case may be. That is stewardship, meaning that you have taken stewardship over the well-being and care of another person. You don't own them as your property. And by the way, when someone tells me I don't have kids, so I wouldn't understand, okay, so let's say I'm in a busy city like Saginaw, okay? A toddler wanders into the street. There's a city bus coming. Now, because I don't have kids, and you know, because obviously if I don't have kids, I don't have common sense about kids, therefore, you know, I wouldn't know anything about them. According to most people, which is why I say it's such a weak-ass argument. So let's say the bus is coming, and I don't know anything about kids, so do I just let that kid get hit by a bus? Or, as someone who has taken on stewardship, do I rescue that child from an oncoming bus? Now, I don't have kids, so what do I know about kids, right? That would be the argument. Well, if that child isn't mine, I would still rescue the child. The child doesn't have to be mine in order for me to rescue or save or protect the child. It only goes to show that people lack common sense. Common sense is not so common, and it's a real problem, needless to say. You don't own your children. Your parents don't own you. The state doesn't own you. The government doesn't own you. It's got to be one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. If we were still in slavery times, you know, if we were before, you know, if we were still living in times prior to the outlawing and abolishment of slavery, then yeah, the argument would be different. But this is 2024. Nobody fucking owns you. Your parents don't own you. You don't own your children. The state doesn't own you. No one owns you as a person. Your God doesn't own you. And that's all for this video, guys. Thanks for listening. Take care.